welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for a very important and not just time sensitive, but societally and humanity wise important conversation that I am going to have today with somebody who's important to me. We're both important to each other in each other's lives. And I feel that having this conversation with Marquese Martin-Hayes, the Goldilocks community knows him as a former guest, as a co-author, and we've done many programs. But what you, the community, may not remember or not understand is Marquise and I are brother and sister, not brother and sister by birth, but brother and sister by choice. And the conversation we always have is the saying goes, blood is thicker than water, but that is actually a bastardized version of the whole saying, which says the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. So when two humans come together based on covenant, based on values and principles, then that bond is truly soul deep. And it is not superficial because you happen to come out of the same womb with the same DNA.
Yeah.
And so Marquise and I are brother and sister from the blood of the covenant perspective. And we've known each other for a while. We like to do things and talk about things together. And today's conversation is going to be about the power of feminine energy, the importance of the feminine energy sitting in its own power, and the way in which that feminine energy can collaborate and co-create with masculine energy while the masculine energy sat in its own power. And when two souls sit in their own power and come together to co-create is when the true magic is unleashed. And nobody should take another's power to feel powerful. And the image I want you to have in mind is just because you blow off another candle doesn't make your candle burn brighter. Okay? So its brightness is based on how many more candles can we light. Imagine if we all sat in our own power and sat side by side, we can create enough runways for every plane to take off and sent out to land in every community with the reindeers, right? So
Right.
that is the image I want you to keep. And here we go, Marquis. Thank you so much for
My
coming on
pleasure.
to have this conversation.
My pleasure. This is one of those beautiful moments where we just get to exchange and talk about things that we know matter, but sometimes others don't get to have. And for us, it's always sporadic. So I love that we're like, all right, let's take this sporadic conversation and share it. So
Absolutely.
glad to be here.
Marquis, so we're living in a time where there is this notion that masculinity has usurped the power of femininity and enslaved it.
Mhm.
And the masculine Western definition of economics has taken away the value of woman and the woman's work because it's not commercially produced for commercial sales. There is no value in a woman.
Mhm.
And then only men work. We've created this modern Western economic narrative
Yeah.
and dehumanized and taken away the power of a woman. And now, when women stand up, they consider themselves empowered, but that empowerment comes from a place of anger sometimes,
Mhm.
right? And then that creates that toxicity.
Mhm.
I want you to share your thoughts on as we kick this off. You and I come from different cultures.
Yeah.
We fully embrace you are the masculine energy in
Mhm.
its purest form. I am the feminine energy in its purest form.
Mhm.
How do you feel that these two need to stay in their own place? And how can the masculine energy power the feminine energy instead of empowering? Empowering means we've already taken the power and now we're piecemealing it back.
Yeah. Because I think the real issue goes back to something we've talked about before. Most people don't know who they are, so they manipulate anything that they can to validate their existence. Um, Whether that be revenue, whether that be sexism, whether that be religion. And for some reason, at least in the Western world, masculinity is the highest form and abuser of that type of injustice, shall we say. And I think that it's sad, first of all. It's sad because before we even get into the power of a woman, which is amazing, all of life comes from woman, all of life. Therefore, by nature, she's more powerful. But we tend to look at everything by force.
Mhm.
And what we have found, what I have come to find is when we look at things by force, we end up in war, we end up fighting, we end up taking versus having the magic, the power, the ability to integrate, to connect, to feel, to adjust. We focus only on this. But this is the life giver. The woman has been a life giver since we've known any of the history we have, the woman has been the life giver. No matter what your background is, the woman has been the life giver, but we've been going with our eyes and trying to force. And I think that it really goes back to lack of awareness, lack of self-awareness. And I think as a result of that, this bruteness, this brute force thing. I
Mhm.
was talking to someone earlier about the whole toxic masculinity thing. Masculinity is not toxic. Toxic people are toxic. And anytime you don't know who you are and you're trying to force your way, or your identity defines who you are, what you have, what you don't have, or who you rule, you are toxic, sir, ma'am. And I think that unfortunately a lot of leadership we have today is that way, but not even going to leadership, going within, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Even I remember growing up, it was my father didn't practice it that way, but I remember growing up that the man ruled the house. Well, who said that? Who said that? Like, and why is that when he's the one that's actually, at least in that day, not at home? He was out working. The woman was ruling the house. So I don't even know where these crazy ideologies come from, Kaz. But yeah, I think it really goes back to just not knowing who we are. And as a result of that, then we always look outside of ourselves, thinking that
Uh,
we can do that
mhm.
and it'll justify it or something.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You talked about the masculine taking a controlling force brute approach, but that's the masculine gender, not the masculine energy.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because masculine energy is protective.
That's right.
Masculine energy is supportive.
That's right.
Masculine energy doesn't allow any harm to come
Uh,
to anything in its sphere of influence.
Right.
And brute force, by very definition, is not masculine energy. It's the masculine gender's insecurities
Yes.
showing up and somebody mislabeling it as masculine energy, the
Yes.
same way they came to this part of the world and called everybody Indians. No, they took a wrong turn.
They took a wrong
Europeans
turn.
didn't ask for directions and took a wrong turn at the Cape of Good Hope, and they can't call this India just because they were going to India,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Native Americans are not Native Indians. West Indies is really not West Indies. They were already here. Nobody discovered them,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
All of these things. But all of this happens because they project their insecurities
Yeah.
and compensate for it as control. And
Hmm.
then everybody calls it the masculine, which is not fair to men who actually embody
Hmm.
that truly supportive and protective instincts that the masculine energy naturally has.
Yeah. It's it's beautiful. A whole masculine man who's self-aware. He's again not seeking to take. In fact, he's seeking to serve. He's seeking to serve those entrusted to his masculine nature.
Mhm,
And he uses that, as you said, to protect, to provide, to
mhm,
share, to nurture, to
mhm,
comfort, and all of those things that is embodied in the concept of what a father or a whole masculine man would do, so that others in his space could grow and do what they need to do. And of course, it becomes an exchange. We haven't talked about the feminine energy, but it becomes an exchange. And I've come to discover for myself that we need the yin and the yang, right? We need the masculine and the feminine. And anytime we are lacking in who we are and we're pulling from it from a role perspective, then not only are we doing the role injustice, but the people that are in our space significant injustice. But again, you know, it's one of those things where I'll say we haven't modeled for us that way, but that the modeling, while it's true that there's a lot of negative modeling of masculine energy, that's not an excuse.
True.
One of the books I read, Doc, that really ruffled my feathers, to say it nicely. Uh, my son also read it, and we go back and forth from time to time. My brother read it; he's getting it too. But the book is called "The Way of the Superior Man," and the author David Data does a really good job of saying, "Hey, listen, you are masculine energy, yes, but you also need to understand how this works." He does not support the masculine way. Instead, he uncovers, well, this is probably why you're acting that way, because you haven't dealt with the things that you haven't dealt with inside of you. And it's a really healthy approach of a man talking to a man with a mirror in his face going, deal with it, fix it.
Yeah.
You're
Mhm.
acting absurd. That's your negative energy, that's your insecurity. And he does a really good job of that. And those sorts of books and men in my life have helped me go, wait a minute, let me take personal responsibility for what I'm feeling, for what I'm experiencing, for what I'm not doing, and for what I need to do without blaming the feminine or blaming anyone else for that matter. But it's difficult because we see it
Yeah.
modeled so much.
And conditioning, right? So,
Exactly that part. Yeah.
yes. And a lot of times, women, when they take the empowerment journey,
Mhm.
they're taking the empowerment journey based on the way the Western
Yeah.
full book works.
Yeah.
You have to accomplish milestones.
Yeah.
Nobody is taking an introspective journey, or most people are not taking an introspective journey to say, does it mean to be in my feminine power?
Yeah.
Loving, nurturing,
Mm,
being at a place of peace,
mm,
having the grace to navigate, right?
mm, mm,
And that is powerful. Think
mhm.
about the fact that you give woman vegetables, she can cook food. You give woman a sperm, she can make it into a baby, right? There
Yep.
is nobody who can truly transform better than a woman. And I always, not jokingly at all, seriously say, even the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost needed a woman and her womb to bring the Son of God into this world.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
All three of them together couldn't accomplish a woman and her womb could, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is power sitting there. And I come from a culture where we worship goddesses.
Mhm,
Energy is Shakti. The feminine is called Shakti, meaning energy. And
mhm,
the energy is what fuels everything. Knowledge is energy, courage is energy, wealth is energy. And wealth includes nature and food and relationships, not
mhm.
just money, right?
Yeah.
So, coming from that culture, I was raised to embrace my feminine power, which includes wisdom, which includes courage, which includes wealth, which includes love is a wealth, by the way. And so
Yeah.
when we show up in that place of feminine power, we're not raised to be princesses, we're raised to be goddesses, right?
That's so good.
So when you show up as a goddess, you don't need anybody's permission. We're a matriarchal culture. Women, when we Sri Lankan Hindu women get married, we already have a job. Our husbands move into our home, but doesn't mean he's secondary. We are equal halves of a whole, two sides of the same coin, and we understand that.
Yeah.
And traditionally, we've been married for life, right? So, talk
Mm.
to me about what comes up for you. You and I talk about this all the time, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
does it take to help the Western feminine movement understand that it is not just getting the jobs and getting the salaries and doing the things, but truly taking that introspective journey and finding your power and showing up in that power? I don't like the word empowerment because empowerment means somebody took everything out of me and now they're rationing it back in. No, I already have the power. My divine is inside me. My divine energy is my source of power and I'm
Mm.
not giving it up. I am owning it and I'm standing in it.
You've rocked me because I could cry because of the number of women I've spoken to, or the number of men that I've spoken to, and being a man myself, how twisted we are into a Western way of thinking that we don't think. The number of women that I talk to whose the man must take care of them. Their salary must be this. And I am not saying that a man shouldn't help provide. But what you described in Sri Lankan culture is the exact opposite. And the reason it stuck out to me is, what if we didn't think in the limitations of the Western way? How many more women would be happily married with someone they love if they didn't have the mindset that he must take care of me, but rather we are taking care of one another? I was listening to something today, and it was a video of a show, probably on Instagram, I don't know. And the gentleman, the wife, the gentleman, the husband, his father had passed. His father had a comic collection, had handed it down to the man. He was hoping to hand it down to his children at some point. They lived okay jobs, all their bills were paid, but they were still paycheck to paycheck. The wife found out about it, discovered that, well, she knew about the collection, discovered the collection was worth 2.5 million, and wanted him to sell it so they could live better. The reason I'm bringing that up is because the conversation went on, well, he should want to do better for his family. And it's like, but they were doing totally fine. And this ideology that we hold on to of how we approach how we're supposed to take care of each other, it's constrained at best. It's constrained. And I love that you brought out the idea that you're not a princess becoming a queen. No, you're not. You don't have your own kingdom in that regard, but you're a goddess that speaks beyond the kingdom, that speaks to holding and harnessing the spiritual energy that you naturally have, that's been given to you, Cass, specifically. And that sense of awareness transforms everything and creates an arena where now you and Mike have, and but others can come together and create a brand new magic that would have not existed in a limited framework of
Mm-hmm.
roles. In fact, for the first time in my life, they did a hell of a job convincing us of those roles, and that's why we have man empowerment and why the man must be in control, because they fed us these lies about our roles to one another. So therefore, the man has to, instead of you're a goddess, you're a god, bring it together. What can we co-create without roles? Just the
Mm-hmm.
awareness of the nature that we come with, and then bring that together, not the gender, and defining it as the role. And man, Cass, this is good. I didn't know we were going to go here. I was literally ready to cry because I'm like, this is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. So those of you who live in the Western world, it's time to level up your thinking. Level up your thinking about the roles and get back into relationship to who you are so that you can relate to your partners, and who knows what you can create.
Absolutely. And I love where you are taking this in the Western context, Marquise,
Hmm.
because the West looks at life as this physical body,
Hmm.
and therefore they have to assign roles.
Hmm.
Whereas the East, we greet each other this way, right? I see
Yeah.
the love, light, and truth inside of you, which is your soul.
Yeah.
And at that point of recognition, I see that your soul and my soul come from the same place.
Yeah.
Therefore, we're connected, right?
Yeah.
And as Sri Lankan Hindus, as East Asian Hindus, we don't look for a God outside. The divine is already inside of us, right? So we look for the divine inside of us. We greet each other this way. This doesn't mean thank you. It doesn't mean sorry the way all these US ads talk about it on TV. It
Hmm.
truly means I recognize the divine inside of you, and my divine recognizes that your divine and my divine are connected. It's
Yeah.
an act of recognition, and
Yeah.
the recognition is for the soul, not the body.
Yeah.
Therefore, the soul doesn't have roles, the soul has power because it's the divine embodying the power. It's not a body that has to fit into a role. I mean,
So
to me, that's the fundamental difference.
yeah, that's so good. That's so good, guys. You open another layer by talking about the East sees the God inside them, the West sees the God outside of them. Therefore, it feeds right back into I'm not enough.
Yes.
So therefore, if I think I'm not enough, I have no sense of who I am.
Mhm.
Therefore, I have to play roles and I have to be strong at the role so I can win. This
And
fake.
it's amazing how this was actually intentionally engineered as part of colonialism to
Exactly.
separate the ancient people from their own divine nature
Exactly.
and control them and manipulate them by changing the language and giving them a religion where they have to seek a God outside. No ancient society anywhere. I am coming to you today from Belize, right? The Mayan culture, the Aztec culture, the Native American culture, the Chinese culture, the South
Yeah.
Asian culture, the African culture.
Yeah.
They all embraced energy and the source of energy and the divine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It
it's the colonial doctrine that has indoctrinated people so that we keep putting identity on the body, and
yeah.
then you can differentiate based on the body. And now we can have everybody fighting with each other.
Exactly. And therefore, it's easy to rule, control, manipulate, misguide, whatever you want to do with ease, for that matter.
Mhm.
Mm, yeah. Wow. You really said some. Ugh. This is good, Cass. This is. I didn't realize. I knew it was gonna be good because whenever we chat, it's always good. But you're really opening me to some things that I really want to share with some people. Of course, I'm gonna share the video, but it's just like how many of us are locked into realms that aren't even us. You know,
Mhm.
I was talking to someone about, and I do this when I'm in corporate, like you're not even present to who you are. You're doing this thing we call corporate speak, where it's just, I'm gonna do this and you're not present and you spend the majority of your day there. So no wonder you are miserable at home. No wonder you need a break. No wonder you look for drugs and abuse alcohol because you are so sick and tired, as you should be, of pretending to embrace roles.
Mhm.
We are not our, this is what I have to tell women, especially Latin women. When it comes to motherhood, you're not the mother. You're a mother, but your identity is not in that alone. Because even in that context, they lose themselves. And when the child's gone, they don't know what to do. When the child's being raised, in some instances, they abandon their partner, not divorce, but like emotionally, because they're so in the role as if it defines who they
Yeah.
are.
Mhm.
But
And so
this,
that's also another interesting concept, right?
Mhm.
So mothers think that because they brought the baby into the world, it's their job to mold the child and raise it in a controlled way.
Yeah.
But the East believes that the child is a soul unto itself. The
Mm,
parents are caretakers of the soul
yeah.
to give its first 18 to 21 years so that it can find its purpose. We
That's right.
don't look for purpose in adult life. We are given the leeway to find our purpose as we become adults so that we can go and live our purpose. So I didn't grow up with having coaches and trying to find our purpose. None of that.
Mhm.
You talk like that, they'll take you to the nut house in that part of the world, right? So
Wow.
it's a very Western thing. And today we have this global economy and the confluences of everything.
Hmm.
And the East and the West are competing for innovation, but the innovation of the West is being done by the people from the East,
Hmm.
right? I mean, look at the top 40
Absolutely.
companies run in the United States. They're all run by Asians, right?
Yeah.
And predominantly South Asians. So we get into this them versus us. Oh, they're taking our jobs. No, how do we come from our place of power? How do women own their power and then give their children the ability to grow up owning the power? Because the change has to happen in the upbringing, right? It's hard to change adults, but we can nurture the young to create a new world. And
Yeah.
so that starts with a mother and a father, the masculine and the feminine,
Mhm.
co-creating an environment for the soul of the child to grow up to be independent. So in my culture, we also don't have last names because the child is the soul, it's not a body. The body came from the mother and father,
Mhm.
but the child is the soul. Therefore, culturally, we do not take a father's name. There is no surname because the soul of the child belongs to no human.
That's so good. Yeah, I was talking to my son about this. I was overly strict with him because I didn't know any better, and I was raising him from the ego mostly.
Mhm.
And somewhere in there, I started to figure it out before he left home, um, which is good, thank God. But at the same time, there was a lot of imprint, there was a lot of scarring emotionally, and so we talked through it over the years. He's one of my closest friends. We're like brothers. I love him.
Yeah, I've seen you together, right?
But to
It's a
your
different world today.
Yeah, and to your point, it's because I acknowledge him as a full-fledged soul.
Mhm.
He is. And I think for women, moving back toward that, it will be true for men and women, but really beginning to rediscover that,
Mhm.
to really begin to understand why was I born? Who am I? What are my innate skills, abilities, powers? What is my spirit, my supernatural power? I don't think we in the West, that's not even something we ask, right? We limit that to religion. But as you said, as a goddess, you have supernatural power. You have gifts and skills and talents that other people don't have. And while they haven't been utilized much in the West, I think some of that's just due to the dumbing down of our thinking. We've looked through the roles of how can it fit. In fact, I have a really good friend right now where she's going through this now, where she has very natural gifts that she's had since she was 3 years old, like just. And so she's trying to figure out, well, how do I do that in the world? I'm going, are you kidding me? I'm going to end up putting you on a retainer for my life because the role you play in the world would significantly benefit me as a business owner. But it's something that we have to get accustomed to. It's something we have to step back from because once we're in the rat race, it's easy to maintain because now we've acquired things and we don't want to lose things because the things represent us because we're in roles and we're completely discombobulated. Instead of saying, none of this matters. How do I return to me and really begin to live?
And that's a wonderful question to ponder, right? How
Yeah,
do I return to the source of my power?
yeah.
And Women's History Month is coming, March. And technically, there is no history without women.
There
You have
is
to
none.
go down, you have to go to seahorse from an evolution perspective for the male to have a baby, right? Beyond that, it's women that procreate.
And Cass, just for the fun of it, it must have been a man who said that was a male seahorse and not a female seahorse. That's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say. I'm just saying.
Belize is surrounded by seahorses. They're kind of cute. They're very tiny too. But how can we, as a society, model for young girls
Mm,
their innate power so that they grow up to know that they're each a goddess and all they have to do is tap into their power and live their gift because technically it's not a gift until you give it away. I mean, I can't come to your birthday party with a box and say, okay, Marquise, happy birthday, but I'm taking it back. If I never gave it to you, it's not a gift. It's not a gift. So we can't claim we have a gift if we never gave it away.
right.
What is that gift? How do we give it? And how do we give it in a way that it's sustaining society?
Mm,
And in that process, how do I own my power?
mhm.
How do we do that for girls? And it's going to take both the masculine energy and the feminine energy side by side to instill that.
Yeah,
And the energy doesn't have to be a biological father. It could be an
yeah,
uncle. It could be an older brother. It could be a teacher, right?
yeah. I think, Kaz, I think it really the awareness in the adults cultivating that every time and any time we're in the presence of children or anyone else for that matter, right? I think it takes the individual knowing themselves so that they can see the God in the child, so they can see the spirit in the child. And
Mhm.
and speak to that not the behavior.
Mhm.
And in speaking to that, ask questions to that, not the behavior.
Mhm.
And I think that reorients how we move. One of the things that I've been growing in and over the last 10, 7, 8 years is being a better listener, meaning not thinking how to solve, but instead how to ask better questions.
Mhm.
One of my mentors, he used to ask me questions and then I would start answering, but he wouldn't say anything else. And it was great because what he had stimulated me enough that I would just keep talking and then I would start to answer myself. I think those of us who have the awareness, I'm not even going to do this as awareness. Those of us who have awareness of who we are have the innate responsibility to help transform culture by starting to ask those questions, by highlighting that in young girls when we see them, by speaking to their magic beyond you're beautiful. You're beautiful is important, it matters. However, being more specific, being more articulate, being more tangible around her wonder, her magic transforms things. I know that we live in a society where we see with our eyes first, that's never going to change. But while we see with our eyes, if we use our mouth to collaborate with the eyes behind the eyes, we can begin to stimulate that. And I think,
Absolutely. Mhm.
yeah,
And then young boys will see
exactly how to do
and
this.
learn to emulate because they are going to model the masculine energy
Right.
around them.
That's right. That's right. Guaranteed.
Mhm.
As I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh, no wonder little girls tend to look at me when they see me, because I do that with my daughters. I intentionally look to do that. I don't know if I always did, but I remember once my daughter asked me, well, why are you proud of me or something like that, and I got to get into, well, here's why. Do you know who you are? And as a matter of fact, um, can't tell her business here, but we had a really good conversation. And my thought was, hey, listen, if this is a road you want to go down, it's imperative that you have an equal partner who's gone down the road themselves and know themselves. Otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Because you can't partner with people in any capacity who are blind. It'll be pulling teeth. It'll be fight. It'll be it can be done, but it's going to be a lot more difficult versus the blood or covenant connection where it's like, hey, I may not understand, but because we're connected, I'm going to at least seek to understand while still holding my own space and grow with you.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And I love how you are using that to model it for your daughters because you're showing them this is what a supportive masculine energy that is protective is going to look like
Yeah.
so that when they choose their life partners they're going to choose that way, right? And it is so important. Research shows that boys pick partners who remind them of their mothers, and girls pick partners who remind them of their fathers, good, bad, or indifferent, because
Mhm.
that's where the comfort is, that's where
Yeah.
the familiarity is.
Yeah.
So we owe it. I mean, I don't have kids of my own, but I have a lot of kids, right? I have kids, but I haven't given birth. But to me and Mike, it's for Mike and I, it's important that we model that behavior
Yeah.
because when they spend time with us, we want them to feel the power.
Yeah.
Spend 10 minutes with us, and it's impossible not to feel that power.
Right.
And we're not serious people. Mike and I are kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
laid back.
Very
We're funny. We're hilarious, if I can say so. We're a laugh a
true.
minute.
Yeah. You guys are hilarious. And I think that's what makes you a great teacher as well, right? You're light, you're
Mhm.
present. Some of the stuff we talked about before we even got on, just allowing those moments of life to exist. And I think, Kaz, when we're not trying to fulfill a role, we're all funny because nothing's at stake then. We're not needing to pretend
Yeah.
or hold space for, no, we're just present.
Yeah. So in
And
your coaching, you actually help people take an inward journey
absolutely,
and find who they are.
absolutely.
So why don't you share a little bit about how people can utilize some of that tools or lean into you to take that journey?
Yeah.
so that through that guided process, people can find their way back. It's like having MapQuest,
Yeah.
except for inside.
Yeah. Well, but wait, most people don't know what MapQuest. I don't know how many people know what
Google Maps.
Google Maps. We'll go with Google Maps. Except Google Maps is wrong these days.
Yes.
Oh God.
That's too.
Oh man, this is fun times indeed. So, guys, one of the things that I do with people is I started asking them questions like, first of all, who are you? And many people don't have an answer. They will struggle because they'll say things like, I've never been asked that before. And so I may say, okay, well, why were you born? Why do you think you are here? What is your unique value proposition, if we will, on the planet? Like, what makes you unique? Sometimes I use the word special. I like to use it. Sometimes people, it's like, well, I'm not special. Like, okay, let's slow down. But having them take an inward journey to begin to ask those types of questions slowly begins to bring things out. Then I'll say something like, what are you naturally good at? Like, what do you love to do? Like, you love it so much. Sometimes you'll forget to eat because you're so engaged in it. And that begins to turn on a few lights. Well, when I do this, I'm really like, yeah, okay. This says a little bit about you. It may not be the exactness, but hey, we're moving in the ballpark around things that begin to help them see how they show up. And then I may say, this old question that I learned from my father in network marketing. If you had all the money you needed for now, the rest of your life, and time was not an issue. You had as much time as you needed. And then I would throw in, and you've already vacationed because most people in America just want to get a vacation. So I have to tell them to get past the vacation. And then I'd say, but you must work as a part of society. What would you be doing? You're not working for the money. You're working as your love to society. What would you be doing? And that begins to go a layer deeper. And of course, at some point, I go like, but I can't do that. And I was like, hey, no, no, no. Just imagine you had to do something to contribute. What would that be? And that slowly begins to unravel that. I've got a new coaching client. He's a CFO of a major Midwestern company. And we were having this conversation. We didn't get this far. But what he said was, he's like, hey, man, I have the family. I have a beautiful wife. I've got great children. I don't need any more money. I'm good. But what I realize is I'm not happy. I'm not happy. It's not because of the people in my life. I'm just something's missing. He said, people will sometimes come into my office. I will look at them and there's something in their eyes that I realize I don't have in my own. It's like, but in terms of natural things, don't need anything. And I'm excited that he's at that stage. And I think sometimes it takes Kaz people getting to, because remember, we're playing roles. So we don't know what we don't know until a light is shined upon us. And until that happens, it's really difficult. But once it happens, it's like the journey begins. Like I could hear a door creaking open slowly, like in a horror film. But that's where I think life starts to begin. And that's what I love to do. I love to help the light come on for people because, quite honestly, Cass, I think a lot of what we're experiencing is because people's lights are out. And
Oh,
when
yeah.
we're out, we
Yeah.
bump into each
We
other.
have a total power outage these days, especially in the United States.
Literally, we are off our rocker in the most dangerous ways uh, imaginable. And I'm gonna say one more thing that's really interesting. No, I won't because I need to read some more science. There's something I was reading about in science around melanin and what happens as it leaves the body and what it does to our brain and how we disintegrate mentally, literally. Like it's a scientific thing. It's not something I'm making up. And how it's really probably not why it's probably, what is the nation that has the young leader? Is it
Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso? Yes, but no, I'm thinking more east. They're only
You're
70,
talking Bhutan.
they're 60, 70 years old near New Zealand. Um, Singapore. Is it Singapore?
Oh, Singapore was a slum that got its independence. It's a manufactured green zone. Actually, Sri Lankan Tamils helped Singapore get its independence, and our language, Tamil, is one of the three national languages in Singapore.
That's so cool. And they're also the one that has the leadership with women and men of all different ethnic backgrounds. Is that the
Yes,
country?
yes.
Yeah.
And housing is all interracial.
Yeah.
People are neighbors.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Uh,
there is incentive for walking
yeah.
to living with nature.
Yeah.
And trash is collected and incinerated
Yeah.
every day to power
Yeah.
the country.
Yeah. I have a friend that I met when I was in Lisbon. She's from there. Literally, she got to go to Cambridge, but she grew up poor because the educational system is high class and all of the Sri Lanka, all of them have access to it. No
Mhm.
one's secluded.
Yes.
And as a result,
And
she's
when
a
you become
contributor.
marriageable age, they give you an apartment. Singapore has a sovereign wealth fund. The national wealth is invested for the people and then given in terms of homes and social programs. And social program is not a communist thing. It is about making sure the bar is lifted for everybody. So there are incentives for walking. There are incentives for taking public transportation. There is incentive
Wow.
for three generations living together because the
Wow.
health and well-being for all three generations are better when there's cohabitation.
Yes. Yes. Remember I said earlier we live in these roles, and because we live in these roles we cannot see. We don't even know how to process what you said in the West. We don't even know how to process what you just said in a healthy lens because we're so sick on the inside and toxic on the inside as a culture that we don't understand the value of others doing as good as we are. We
Doing
don't
better than
understand
we
that.
are.
And what you're
Doing
talking about.
better than we are.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And in Singapore, now Singaporeans get to be productive around the world because they're coming from a safe base of development and nurture and care with high expectation, high access. Of course they'll be successful. Of course they'll last.
Yes.
Wow. But I think it's, yeah, honoring the God and goddess of them through their leadership. And I actually want to read the book of the guy who founded it. I heard he was pretty amazing. One of their first
Strict,
president, Joe.
strict public policies in Singapore. You can't chew gum publicly and spit it out. The punishment is public caning.
Well, we probably shouldn't spit out our gum anyway, you know. But I
Yeah.
live in Chicago. They throw trash out the window. So
Chicago is a clean city, though. One of the cleanest cities in the world.
where?
Seriously, Chicago is a very,
Heard.
very clean city.
I've heard New Yorkers tell me they love Chicago because it's clean. I look around and I go, I'm glad I don't live in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting, Kaz. And I think going back to what we talked about and really empowering women,
Mhm.
I think it's letting go of the ego and the role that I've accepted as my identity and truly finding myself.
Yeah.
Because I have no problem supporting feminine power. In fact, I tell women who are used to playing the role, when they come to me and they say something like, "Well, he won't do what I need him to do," and I'm like, "Who are you trying to fool? You're the same woman who got him to say yes. So you have power. You're just forfeiting it because of a role." Instead of being aware of the goddess that she is and how she can transform things. I mean, women have truly empowered me. That's where I didn't get my power from men. I got respect, I got guidance, but in terms of like the igniting nature within, that came from women because that's part of the gifting that they have to stimulate life, to take something and ignite it and make it beautiful. Yeah.
So, what message, as a comfortable in your masculinity power guy,
Yeah.
what message do you have for women? And I
Mm,
want you to also think about the need for us to integrate forgiveness in this.
mm,
Forgiveness is not for other people. Women need to forgive the past sins of everybody else. Otherwise, we're holding on. Anger and hatred are fire you hold in your own palm. It's only
yeah.
going to burn you, right? So letting go is healing for you. So
Yeah.
when you look at it through the power of forgiveness and the power of grace, and through peace, everything is possible. What message do you have for women to embrace their feminine power so that they can show up from that place of power without asking for it?
just the way you worded that question is powerful to be able to show up in it without asking for it. Well, I'll say this. If you don't forgive, you're only hurting yourself. That's for real. Cancer is not just food related. It's also stress related, stress and self-induced. So you're ending the quality of your life, if not your entire life, far more quickly by holding on to it. So that's the first message. The second part to that is the freedom you deserve, you have to allow it because you're the same person not allowing you to have it. And the forgiveness is your gateway back to that freedom. It doesn't mean someone got over on you. No, but it's necessary for you to be able to bloom. The third thing I would say is for those of you who are not mothers, it's still nurturing is in your nature. Imagine the offender as a child. I didn't say let them get away with it or fight or any of that. I'm just saying imagine them as a child. A mother in her natural nurturing state understands it's a child. And what I can tell you, if you go back and listen to the earlier part of our video, the Western world is a very sick place because it's a very immature place and unaware of itself. And so as a result, acting like children playing roles, forgetting that this is reality and that they have much more to offer, but they're disconnected. They're disconnected from it and don't understand it. And then I would say take the deep dive. Take the deep dive because while you have the same power to forgive or hold on to, you also have the same power to discover that by yourself, as you are magic. And it's not the same as I don't need a man. That's not what we're talking about. That's toxic. We're talking about you are a goddess. You're uniquely designed and born for a particular reason. And there's a magic that you have that you discover when you're with other healthy women, even that the world needs. That the world needs. We need you to help us heal because we are off our rocker. Please do that because it's through that individual work that the other worlds begin to change. My
And I
favorite. Oh, go ahead.
and I respect that message you just gave. It's not about I don't need a man. The feminine energy can show up and be in its power when it's protected and supported by the masculine energy. And the masculine energy can show up in its protective nature when it has the feminine to nurture, right? And so this is truly the cosmic creation,
Mhm.
and denying one part for the sake of another doesn't make any sense.
We all lose.
Yeah.
We literally, we literally, my favorite term is interdependent. We need one another. That's what it is. We need one another to be better at who we are.
Mhm.
That's how it was designed because it takes us both to reflect divinity.
Yeah. And a lot of times the masculine and feminine energy is looked upon in terms of marriage and
Right.
family.
Mm,
But here we are, you and I, brother and sister, it works. If
that's
we
right.
were business partners and there was masculine energy and feminine energy side by side, truly coming from its own place of power, that is going to be an unstoppable combination, right? So any endeavor, when it's balanced and there is synchronicity,
Mhm,
and
mhm,
each of the source of energy shows up in its authentic self,
mhm,
then success becomes inevitable.
mhm,
How do we
mhm.
help people understand that? It's not about if I win, you have to lose,
Yeah,
but how do we both thrive and co create?
yeah. I think it's like this, Kaz. We tell our stories more because the narrative, like we're fighting narratives, right? We're fighting the romance novel of the woman's waiting for the man to save her. We're fighting the romance novel of this man must, we're fighting these narratives, and I think more narratives like these have to come out. It's Black History Month in America still.
Yes.
And what I love about social media is new narratives, new to me. They've been around hundreds of years. New narratives keep showing up, and it's like, oh my gosh, wow, wow, wow. But it's without those narratives, without those stories, I don't get to have those experiences. So I
Mhm.
think us telling the story more like we are here is the way that that begins to happen. I mean, story is the most powerful form of communication. It's been around for eons before there was Instagram and MySpace,
Yes,
right?
storytelling is the way history was passed on.
I think we have to do more storytelling, find more opportunities to just exchange and interact. And I also think because you're in your feminine goddess power, when you show up, that's why there's laughter, that's why there's lightness, and it creates space for acceptance.
Oh, you're so sweet.
It just does. It just creates
Thank you
space for
so
acceptance.
much for being willing to have this conversation with me.
No
You and
problem.
I normally talk for hours about these things because that's one of the things we do.
Yeah, yeah.
And normally Mike is there with us along for the conversation, but we'll get there someday, somehow.
Hug him for me too. Yeah,
But
this
thank
is
you
good.
so much. And I truly do appreciate you making the time to talk about this because we as a society need this.
Need desperately,
Yes. Mhm.
desperately.
And talk about it from a place of peace and calm and
Hmm.
acceptance
Hmm.
with absolutely no presence of anger or hate or any
No,
animosity. It just is.
it goes back to this
Mhm.
God
Yeah.
in you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Marquise. This has been an absolute honor and a pleasure. I couldn't have imagined doing this with anybody else but you.
You.
It is a fantastic brother sister conversation.
Yeah.
And to our audience out there, this is a two-part episode, so tune into both of them and listen to both of them because our intention here is for everybody to see that we can come from two parts of the world, from two traditions, from
Mm.
two different languages, religions, culture, ethnicity, all of it. But if we are aligned from a covenant perspective, something that is soul deep from a values perspective that is rooted in our humanity, we
Mhm.
will realize that we are each other's brothers and sisters and we are each other's keepers.
Yeah.
And our success for our future lies in our ability to see that. So I'm going to give you the last word, Marquise. Go ahead.
I love you. And I'm glad to be in partnership. Glad to be in blood covenant. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marquise. And to our audience, go out there and live your power
Please.
and don't let anybody snuff that out because it's yours and nobody takes your power unless you give it up. So don't give it up.
And we're all better for it. So show up.